Hey guys, so I wanted to talk about something that was kind of a big event in my life. I just made my secrets video and I kind of left out one secret that is, it's not really a secret, but it's something that's kind of had a big impact on my life, and that would be Hurricane Katrina. I think, a lot of people the people who didn't experience it think that they know or think that they can sympathize, but you really can't unless you've been through something like that. So there are two things I want to talk about. I want to talk about my experience with it, and I want to talk about how it has affected me and shaped me into the person that I am today. So, I was about 10. I was in 5th grade when it happened, and I had a house in Long Beach, and my grandparents lived in Pass Christian, Mississippi. And actually, a lot of people think that the hurricane actually happened in New Orleans, and not saying that they didn't have many problems, but it was more like the aftermath and the rain. There was so much water and storm surge that when the levees broke, it just flooded into the city. Obviously, they had normal hurricane damage. It was a pretty strong hurricane, but a lot of people don't know this. It was actually Pass Christian that suffered the brunt of the hurricane because that's where the eye was. And so my grandparents' house was in Pass Christian. My grandparents lived in a historical landmark for Mississippi. It was a very big house. It was one of the old plantation houses, and it was called Union Quarters. It was occupied during the Civil War by Union soldiers and dubbed the Union headquarters. And it was a much larger property, but they sold a lot of it because it wasn't necessary to have so much land. And so on the property there was their house, which was, I want to say there were I'm not really sure, but I'm thinking there were something around 16 bedrooms. I don't even know how many bathrooms. There was a parlor, dining room, a kitchen, a whole slave wing where, not that we had slaves, we didn't own any slaves, it's just what was from the original property back in the 1800s when they did own slaves. And not saying slavery is right either. So that was all there, and they had a pool and a nice, good-sized pool house. So we weren't going to evacuate originally. We were going to stay, and because we had just evacuated for a hurricane, I think maybe 2 weeks before, something like that, just a couple weeks before, and we came back. We actually evacuated to Baton Rouge, I'm pretty sure, and we came back, and nothing happened. There was some branches in the yard. It wasn't that big of a deal. We didn't have any water in either of our houses. It really wasn't that big of a deal. And it kind of costs, it costs a little bit of money to evacuate. You have to go find a hotel and make sure that you have food and all that stuff. It's kind of like taking a vacation, but it's like a forced vacation. So we decided that we were going to stay because my grandparents' house actually survived during Hurricane Camille. So that's supposed to be the strongest hurricane so far, other than Katrina now. So we were just going to stay in their house, and they have a basement, so we figured if anything bad was to happen, we could just go in the basement and it'd be fine. So the morning before, my grandmother was watching the news, and it said that Hurricane Katrina had become a Category 5 hurricane. So we all kind of packed up and left. We didn't really pack a whole lot because we figured nothing was going to happen, and that we didn't have that much time. We left the morning before. I remember getting on the road, and the traffic was so horrible getting out. It was all the last minute people. I think we were on the road, and we were kind of out of the area and the hurricane had kind of gone around us. So I remember at one point we were worried about tornadoes and what we were going to do if we actually ran into the hurricane. So but that never happened, so we were pretty lucky about that. Anyway, so we stayed up in Montgomery, Alabama, and I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. We stayed in Montgomery, Alabama, and at the time, I was 10 years old. I had a child's mind, and I remember I had my dog buried in the backyard, and my dog had died around Christmas time, so we put her in a box and wrapped her up in Christmas wrapping paper. So I remember watching the news, and after everything had happened, and everything was just kind of washed away in my town, in Long Beach, and I was so worried. I remember thinking, what if the waves unearthed my dead dog and it was wrapped like a present and somebody came along and found it and opened it and they would take my dog from me. And I remember I was so upset and I was crying, and it was so silly now that I think about it, because I don't know, that was just stupid to think that. And but I was a child anyway. And so maybe a couple of days after, when things kind of settled down, we went back, and we went to our house first, and we were so fortunate that there was a huge hotel right in front of where my house was. It was a couple houses back, but it was directly in front, and it was a cement building, so it actually washed away, but our house was still there, and everything around us was just completely gone. It was just all washed away. And there were people who said God put a bubble over our house. He wanted to watch out for us. So we figured, well, duh, our house is still there. Grandparents' house must definitely be there, this huge house should have survived. So we're feeling pretty good, and we start driving towards Pasquishan. Pasquishan is about 20 minutes from Long Beach, and so we were driving, and by this point it started raining, and we were driving on Highway 90, and because that was really the only clear roads, but there were these huge holes in the road, and sometimes there were trees, and there was debris in the road, so it's kind of hard to get by. And we were in this huge white van. It's probably about 16 feet long. It was a big white van, because we figured if we had to bring anything back, it's kind of like a U-Haul truck. So we get to Pasquishan, and the roads are really bad, and it was raining. So my mom, we couldn't get right up to the house where we wanted to. We actually had to pull over because the debris was in the road, and it was so bad. So my mom got out of the car, and she said, "Stay here, I'll run and just make sure everything's okay, and I'll be back." And I remember it seemed like the longest time, and I think she must have been gone for a half hour, but I felt like I was sitting there for hours. And I remember I saw her, I was watching for her through the rain, and I started to get really worried, and I started crying. My grandpa is not a very, he can be sympathetic, but not usually. I remember he looked at me with tears in his eyes, and he said, "It's okay. If it's not there, that doesn't matter. All that matters is that we're all safe and we're all together." And so my mom came back finally, and she got in the van, and she was just crying hysterically, and I started crying, and I just knew what she was going to say. And so she gets in the car, and she says, "It's gone. It's just all gone. There's nothing there." And you kind of wonder, how could God do this to you? Why? I remember thinking, why did God hate me so much? What did I do? And I wanted to know why he had to take my house from me, because it was pretty much like my second house, because I was there all the time. I was there almost every day, swimming or hanging out with my grandparents. And so I was really upset with God for a really long time. So we spent probably about 3 months picking through everything. I didn't go back to school for at least, I think it was 2 months before I went back to school. And my school and church was washed away too, so I had to take school. Our school took over this abandoned skating rink that was still left standing, and we had school in a skating rink, which everybody thinks is really awesome, but it was pretty fun, but it was really weird. And then like for lunch, I remember I didn't complain. I ate my lunch like a good girl, but I remember we used to have like milk, and sometimes it was sour, and we would have like half frozen little Smucker's Uncrustable sandwiches. They're like that, and like an apple or banana or orange or something. And so anyway, when I moved to Mobile after everything, my first meal at my new school at St. Mary's was a baked potato, and I was so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, you guys have hot food, you guys are so lucky. And everybody just kind of looked at me like, this girl is a freak. And I was having a hard time adjusting, but considering the circumstances, I think I did pretty good. But anyway, so that was my experience. It's obviously a very abridged version, but that's pretty much how things went. And so I want to talk about what it taught me. One thing is, in times of distress and turmoil, everybody comes together and everybody becomes one family, and it's really beautiful. And nobody judges anybody, and everybody helps each other. I remember we went to the store in Mobile because there weren't really any stores left in Mississippi where we lived. And we bought 10 loaves of bread and 10 jars of peanut butter, and we gave them out to people who were camping where their properties were. I remember this one lady, she just started crying, and she was so happy, and she said, "Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. You don't know how much this means." And it wasn't even about the food. It was the act that, we were all coming together to help each other, to make sure that everybody had what they needed. And so yeah, it was really beautiful. The second thing it taught me, I have a very healthy respect for water. I love the water. I love going to the beach. I haven't been in Mississippi Gulf Coast waters yet since Katrina, because I have this fear that I'm going to walk in the water and step on a nail. It's going to be awful. I'm going to have to get a tetanus shot. But I really like Gulf Shores, Alabama. I go body surfing. I'm a very strong swimmer. I was on the swim team for 3 years. I didn't do it my junior year, but going to do it this year, my senior year of high school. I love swimming. I actually would like to become a marine biologist. I love fish. I love learning about all different kinds of organisms in the water. I love snorkeling. I like scuba diving. I love all of it. But I have a very healthy respect for the water, which I think people should have. You can have as much fun in the water. The water can be your best friend. It can be, like it is for me, it can be your inspiration, your soulmate. But at the same time, it can destroy things in a matter of seconds. So that was the second thing it taught me. And the third thing is that people really shouldn't judge other people, because I know when I moved to Mobile, I had a very hard time, and I was very quiet, and I didn't really understand what a lot that was going on, and a lot of people judged me. And I have some of my friends now tell me that I was a freak when I came to the school, but they fixed me up and I wasn't a freak anymore. Okay, well, you have to remember, I just lost everything that I had. I was depressed. I was very depressed. I used to come home and cry just because I didn't like the change. I'm okay now. But the other thing it's taught me is that change is good. And you have to accept change. And that, some things you can't help, and you just have to move on with your life and stay strong. And the fourth thing, before I run out of time, is that